Do you love the idea of personal growth but find the practice of it exhausting?
We get it.
We're Brandon and Megan Giggling, growth coaches with the mission to put the personal back in personal growth.
If you want a new way of growing into the next version of you without the frustration, guilt, and overwhelm, you're in the right place.
It's time to rethink your growth journey and make it into something that works for you.
You in?
Welcome to Growth Reframed. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Growth Reframed. We are so glad you're here. Today we are going to tackle the topic of the comfort zone.
Ooh, tackle a topic. I liked that. It's kind of nice alliteration there.
Basically, this comes off a conversation that we had just yesterday at lunch, a spirited conversation, if you will, about comfort zone and our beliefs on it. And I think it was important to bring it here because we'd love all your takes as well, like what you think based on the end of this episode. Like, do you agree? Are we way off? Like, what are your thoughts on it? I think there's so many different beliefs out there on comfort zone, and to be honest, I think it can really get a bad rap.
Definitely. I think that in the personal growth world, there are so many people that believe that the only thing to do is to be in discomfort. And while I get what they're saying as far as like, yes, you do need to be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes to grow, I think that there's a danger in being perpetually uncomfortable and perpetually sitting in this discomfort in the pursuit of growth. And that's where we want to talk today. We just want to have that conversation because, like Brandon was saying, we did get kind of spirited about, can you grow and how do you grow and how that all relates to the comfort zone.
Right. And what came up for me is, Meg, I mean, basically say, like, you were of the opinion, and I'm not even saying it's wrong. You're entitled to the opinion. I will actually give us kudos because typically when we used to have these discussions, we'd both get mad and we'd walk away a little bit angry. We didn't do that. We actually came to kind of a conclusion that maybe we can agree to disagree on some of these points, but ultimately I think we ended in the same place, which we'll get to in this episode. But you were kind of the opinion that it's impossible to grow when you're in your comfort zone. It is actually physically impossible to have growth in your comfort zone. I don't agree. I don't think it's impossible to be in your comfort zone. Now, let me say this. If you look up the definition that like personal growth people are using for the comfort zone, right? Let's just do that. So if you look up that definition, it's like almost sitting in a stagnant place where you're not doing anything. You're essentially, to give a picture of it, you're like laying on the couch every day and you're not trying to further yourself, better yourself in any way. That's what they're using to define it. Where I think it gets mixed up, though, is there are levels of comfort that are good, that are positive for your life. And I think what happens in the growth space, the personal growth space, is often we look at comfort at all as a topic and just look at those people and say, well, you're lazy. You're not doing what you need to do. If you were, you'd be where you need to be. And again, I don't think comfort as a whole should be in question. I honestly, as I'm thinking about it, I think that growth in of itself comes with some form of action, right? Growth comes with action, but you can take action and still be comfortable.
Right. But I think you're not going to grow all that much if you're sitting there comfy and cozy. Like, I'm not saying that there's not a time and a place for sitting in the comfort zone. I fully believe there is. I think it's not only acceptable, it's probably advisable to be in the comfort zone at some point because you're just going to get exhausted if you're always pressing on to new things. But I don't think that you're going to make much progress if you're just sitting comfy cozy. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't think that. Like, you're not going to be having big, huge leaps and bounds of growth. Like, answer this. When have you grown the most in your life? Like, when have you noticed like real significant growth in your life? Was it when you were doing nothing out of the ordinary and nothing uncomfortable? Or was it a time that you were challenged through and then came out on the other side and was like, wow, that was challenging, but that's growth, baby.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, honestly, yeah, for the most part, to exponentially grow, like big levels of growth, big leaps in your life, they were forced discomfort. They weren't even discomfort that I necessarily invited in a lot of ways, but they were forced discomfort, which forced me to then take a position where I was uncomfortable and had to deal with uncomfortable things. And it can definitely exponentially improve your growth. What I'm saying is you can sit in some level of comfort and you can still be growing. And I use the
you
fact
just
for
said
you.
some level though, and I've never argued that point.
Okay, but basically this is what I used as an example for our conversation. In our relationship, we actively do try to improve our relationship. But let's say we didn't. Let's say we just sat there. We had community with each other over time, as years went on. Chances are you're going to get closer. You're going to grow in your relationship, right? It's a relational growth. It still fits under the idea of being in some level of comfort. And I would think in our relationship, we are doing things to improve, but we're not constantly pushing ourselves into levels of discomfort. I think me and you, and we kind of ended this way yesterday, I think we're on like the same page foundationally, because ultimately you need some levels of comfort in your life. I believe that comfort is a foundation for where you need to be. I actually looked it up on Wikipedia, and it was like your comfort zone is you're in a state of less anxiety, less stress, and you're comfortable with where you're at. Okay,
Right.
That's how I look at it. So like foundationally, I think it's very important to have some level of comfort in your life.
I agree.
And I think what you were saying, and you can speak to this more, because I think it's very important. There's levels of comfort that it's okay to be in, while also being in areas that you are choosing to have some more discomfort. You're choosing to push out of the comfort zone. And both of those things can equally exist and be good. And I think if you go too far either way, it can be negative. But I think how it's posed is if you are not constantly in some level of grind, discomfort, and hustle, you will not grow. You will not progress. And I've heard people say it, that you can't possibly progress if you're sitting in any level of comfort. That's at least how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah. See,
and
that's
I
where
think that's a bad interpretation. And I think if I was interpreting it, and I mean I was headfirst into this whole personal growth space, then I think for anyone else who's on the starting line of this could easily find a way to misinterpret it as well and feel bad about themselves if they're not able to pursue things in a way that they're supposedly supposed to do.
Right. And here's where I think we really actually are agreeing on this thing is every time you've said it in this whole episode, you've said some level. Like you keep coming back to the word some level, like some. And so I think that what we're really saying is basically the same thing. You're not arguing against me, really. You're saying that there should be some sort of foundational level. And I do agree. Like I'm not disagreeing with that point at all. And I feel like that's where it's getting like kind of confused for probably us a little bit, and also where people probably just struggle. And like you were saying, like when you're into personal growth, like what is that? What is that? And how do I do that? Because for me, I don't interpret it like as maybe I grew into this. Maybe I originally did. Now I'm interpreting it different than I would have a year or two ago. I'm not sure. But I'm interpreting it like I can be comfortable in 4 areas and choose some discomfort, or maybe naturally some discomfort happens to me in another area and I will grow. It's not that I have to have all 5 areas. I'm just making up the number 5 here, all in an uproar to grow. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I do think that if everything's fine, if literally nothing in life happens and you're not pushing anything, then you'll probably just stay about who you are. You probably won't grow very much. You'll probably just be in 6 months or a year. If nothing changed for you, you'd probably essentially be the same person with not a whole lot of growth. Whether the discomfort is intentional or unintentional, I mean, tragedies happen. That's not intentional, but it still grows you in some way, right? You have to cope with that. You have to come out the other side and become a stronger person from those things. That's accidental. That was not intentional, but you still grew. When our marriage was in shambles, like that wasn't comfortable. You did not choose that, but you are stronger today. We are stronger today just because of that. And that was a huge discomfort. And I think that we wouldn't have even the marriage that we have, the relationship that we have, and I get that's relational, but I do think that all of that kind of comes into effect.
Right. But I did say earlier, forced discomfort, and the relational thing, like our marriage issues, that was forced discomfort. That was there. But I'll say 2 things to your points there. Number 1, if you Google right now, don't stop this podcast, listen to the rest, please. But if you, at the end of this podcast, go Google not personal growth, comfort zone. Just go Google comfort zone. You will find 10,000, probably 100,000 articles about how it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Now, if you Google that and you see that as a person who's sitting in some level of comfort, you can begin to believe that you have to pursue discomfort no matter what. Like, you can't be comfortable. You can't rest. You can't feel good about where you're at.
Right.
And see, that's where, like, your interpretation, totally on with it. Totally for it. Like, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I hope y'all can hear it's a little bit of a heated conversation, but that is good. That's why we wanted to hit record right now and share this, because this is important. So the first thing would be, overarching, the theme is you should not be comfortable. I think that's a mistake.
Says the world.
Says the world, not us, but I think that's a mistake, number one. Number two, the other thing I want to say, based on what you were just saying, of forced discomfort, is it even possible to remain in your comfort zone? If I'm like, you know what, Meg? I'm staying comfortable. I don't care what anyone says to me this week. I'm going to be comfortable. My situation's going to be comfortable. I'm going to stay in my comfort zone no matter what. Is that even possible? Because like you said, hey, 9-10 years ago, I was sitting in comfort, baby. I was feeling good. And you came to me and were like, no. And I had no choice. And so like, I could have said, you know what? No, I'm going to stay comfortable. You wouldn't have been around. I mean, like, there's things where is it even possible? Do you believe it's possible to be in a comfort zone, to actually stay there? Is it possible for people to do that?
For a time, yes. And then it just depends on when life throws you one, right? Like, I mean, you might be like, I'm going to stay in the comfort zone and I'm not going to do anything intentional for the next year. Now, if the next year nothing happens to rock the boat, so you've made no intentional choices to rock the boat, and your life just happens to be miraculously amazing, like nothing happens to you, life is peachy, everything's great, then sure, I guess for a time you could. But the rule of the world is that eventually, right, something's going to happen. So could you do it in perpetuity? No, of course not. Something at some point is going to happen. Somebody will get sick. Something will happen to your life that will make you be in discomfort. That's just the fact of life. That's just how it goes.
Right.
But you can choose for the rest of time to not intentionally like take out personal growth. Basically, if you choose to never pursue personal growth, then yeah, you would stay in their comfort zone a lot longer and you would only be dealing with the things that you can't control. But the things that you can control, yeah, sure, you could do it till the day you die.
Right. Well, I like the analogy you used of you won't want to rock the boat, right? I love that analogy.
I didn't even mean to do that.
You didn't, but I love it because one of the quotes that's floating out there for personal growth is a ship in the harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. Okay, well, that's true, right? A ship is meant to, they don't make a ship to sit in the harbor. They don't make a ship to sit in the marina. They make it to sail out in those rapids and those rough waters, and that's part of it, right? But does that ship not eventually have to come back to shore? Does that ship not eventually have to have an anchor to hold it in position? And that's what I'm talking about here. Foundationally, you do need some level of comfort, some level of where you feel good about what you're doing.
And I think that enables you to take the risk too.
Right.
I think when you feel that comfort, that's like what enables you to push out past it too. Like when you feel solid somewhere.
It's not necessarily safe, and that's not where you always want to stay. I totally understand that. But you also, when you're out on the water, eventually have to come back to shore. You do need to refuel. Yeah. You do need scheduled maintenance on that ship, or it eventually probably will sink. There's things that you're taking for granted when you're thinking about it in such like a singular way. Like that's just, you can't look at any of this in one singular way, or you're going to find yourself in just a serious case of overwhelm. And I think that's the hard part, right? I mean, it's like you have to have some level of rest and comfort in this. But like me and you have joked about too, it's like, are you forcing it for your life?
Right. Well, I think
we often joke about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to say I think that one of the things that has really helped us is to almost, if we know that we're going to pursue some growth, if we're going to challenge ourselves and step out into a little bit of discomfort, I think that we are getting so much better at choosing one thing, not letting it be all the things. We're not going to intentionally choose a moment of high stress and high anxiety to then go chase a new dream, right? We're going to step back from that. Or if we decide that it is time to chase a new dream, we're going to chase one dream. We're going to step out into a little bit of discomfort in this one area and not let 16 other things come in that we're going to then also attack and step out in the comfort zone. Like if we're going to work on this podcast, like let's go, but that's not also going to be the time that we're going to do 5 other things.
Well, I've found for our own life, like because this seeps in, this is why this topic's so important. Because when we're in levels of comfort, we create struggle. We create battles. Like we just had a conversation about a relationship last week. We created a fight because what? Because it was too comfortable? Because like we weren't okay just being okay in the moment? Like I feel like so often we look for things to make a problem so that we can solve it or feel like we're doing something. But I don't think it's always necessary. Like you said, I agree 100%. You focus on one thing. You don't look at all the other things. Right. And we've often joked about, because we've been talking about relationship a lot, we often joked about, well, if comfort zone is the worst, then let's just go get a divorce. Because you know what? That would make things really uncomfortable.
We'd certainly grow.
What growth would we have from that? Or, hey, I should just quit my full-time job today because that would force me to go through some levels of growth. Y'all, you see, I mean, we're joking here, but you see where it can get you down a bad path if you follow it too singularly and too close and you only look at it in one way. It's a big issue. There's multiple layers to this issue. And I think if you just say the statement, well, don't stay in your comfort zone, y'all, you can take it the wrong way. I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point that a lot of people need to hear because there is 100% a time and a place for comfort zone. I am team comfort zone, okay? Like I am not against it. I don't think you should stay there forever because I don't think that you will ultimately become who you're trying to become. But absolutely, you need the time and the space to just be okay, to just be okay with who you are now, to just not take the risk, to just let life kind of happen around you and be content with it. Like contentedness is a big thing and we underrate it so much. We're always trying to do more, be more. Like, let's get busier. Let's do more things. Let's add to the schedule. Sometimes it's okay to just be content and we don't always have to push out of the comfort zone and we don't always have to be pursuing the next best version of ourselves. Sometimes we just need to sit where we're at and enjoy the ride.
Right. I mean, gosh, I just went through a season where rest was the best thing for me. It really was counterproductive to be pursuing things outside of a level of comfort of where I was at because I was already dealing with so many things. And y'all, we're all dealing with so many things. This world is so heavy. So if we're adding the additional pressure of needing to constantly not be in comfort and be in discomfort, that's where it can get to just a terrible place. But like you said, I think ultimately we can agree on the fact that it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Comfort is not always bad, but it can be bad if you're constantly only sitting in familiarity.
Right. If you want to grow. That's the other part of it. I mean, if you don't have anything else that you want to accomplish, if your life is great as it is and you don't really have anything else, then who are we to tell you to get out of your comfort zone? Freaking sit in your comfort zone. We don't care. Like, it's not up to us. It's up to you. And you have to determine the whens and the hows of your own comfort zone and if you're going to get it or if you're going to stay in it and how long you'll be there and when it's time to come out of it. It's all you. You get to decide.
Oh my gosh. Preach it, sister. My goodness. I mean, that is so important, y'all. Like, go back and re-listen to that. That is so important. You get to make the choice. You get to decide what you want. If you're happy where you are, don't let anyone make you feel bad because you're not doing what they say you should do. They don't get to live your life. You do, y'all. So this week, think about some of these things. Let us know what you think about comfort zone and if you think it's completely bad to be there or if it's getting a little bit of a bad rap. And until next week, we love y'all.
Thanks for listening to Growth Reframed. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We would love to connect with you, so shoot us a DM on Instagram @Growth Reframed. We love y'all.